Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we be nurtured together. May we be nourished together. May we strive together. May our learning shine. May we not quarrel. Peace. From last session, we were discussing about the true yoga of what is true renunciation. Chapter 5, Bhagavad Gita, Sannyasi Yogaha. That is a yoga of true renunciation. And we discussed what is true renunciation as to what is partial renunciation. And we took apart the word sannyasa, and we just said, we used an example of a marble, and we said a marble is a marble nyasa, that is a marble renunciate. But a marble nyasa is not a true marble sannyasi, because a true sannyasi does not have any attachment to the object which they have let go of. Whereas a nyasa has still some form of attachment despite that object not being available immediately in their presence. We said, for example, if my dad tells me to stop playing marbles, and I stop playing marbles, but then as soon as I see my friends playing marbles, then instantly I watch the game, which means that still I have not completely let go of my love for marbles, which means in that case I'm a marble nyasa. I'm not a true marble sannyasi. Only when, let's say in a couple of years, when I have a son, and so many years have passed, and my son says, "Hey, Dad, let's go out and play some marbles." I say, "Okay, I'll play marbles with you." I don't go, "Oh my God, this is so fantastic! Marble opportunity all over again." In other words, I can just play the game, and as soon as the marble game is over, I'm able to go back to my work without having any thoughts about that game. That means that is a true sannyasi, a true renunciate. So we have to get these terms right. What is a partial and what is a true sannyasi? That means you cannot say that one is a sannyasi, whereas they're still participating in partial worldly matters and they're still attending and passionate about their worldly... See, it's very hard to say, because even a true sannyasi can be doing work very dedicatedly in their profession, and yet their mental attitude is detached from the work. So we're not here to judge who's a sannyasi or who's not, because that means that one can still, as I said, be very engaged in the world, and in their mind they recognize this is only Ishvara, and I'm doing my actions to the field of Ishvara, and I'm not expecting any results in return. That's a karma yogi, but that can also be a sannyasi. Okay, and we also talked about how this karma, the attitude of karma yoga eventually causes the mind to go inwards, which is the whole point of both karma yoga and finally taking on this naturally progressing to the stage of a sannyasi. Remember, you cannot take a role of a sannyasi. You cannot order to be a sannyasi. It is a natural course of progression in life. That means we first start by slowly recognizing that the world is beautiful in itself, but ultimately we come to a point and we see that the world ultimately doesn't have much to offer me, because it is all transient. It all comes and goes. So that means the person starts to spend more time inwards and appreciate the self, and not be so fascinated about endless worldly objects coming in and out of their experience. So I want to show you what happens between a worldly person. What is the psychology? Let's dig into the psychology of a worldly person. And then we'll compare that to a karma yogi or a sannyasi. Okay, The first thing I want you to look at is this circle here. This circle here is the causal body, which is there, and the causal body consists of your karma, and it consists of the vasanas, or you could say samskaras. Now you see there's three colors, red, black, and yellow. The yellow, first thing you'll notice is that the proportion of the red and the black is bigger than the yellow. You see that? Now what is red? Red is the rajas. We got it up there. Rajas is an active energy. It's an energy of desire. And rajas primarily means, to kind of give it an easy understanding, is whenever there's a want or a desire or a craving for something, that's when the level of rajas in that moment is over proportional to, let's say, sattva or tamas. Not necessarily, because see, we're not here to sort of judge which one of these three energies should you have at any one moment. You're just simply to recognize how they operate constantly, and they are outside your control. You see that? Because they're controlled by Maya, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, and they're always shining in different proportions. So that means, but at the same time, while they're shining, do realize you do have control simultaneously as to how much quantity is available in one's being at any one moment, depending on the actions that you do. So in this case, the Rajas is highly proportional. So that means, what does that mean? That means this person is likely doing a lot of things. They're imagining, they're desiring, they're craving, they're wanting. But at the same time, as I said, wherever there is Rajas, wherever there is this energy of desire, simultaneously there's an energy of Tamas. And Tamas is what? Avarana Shakti, the veiling power which veils one's knowledge of the self. So that means whenever I desire something in the world, and I excessively desire it, then at the same time, think about why am I desiring it? Because I'm fearing of not getting it, or fearing of not getting something which I don't want instead. If I want that, it automatically presupposes I don't want this. If I want this, it presupposes, whether I acknowledge it or not, that I don't want that. So that means if I want something, then I don't want something. Which means if I want something that is raga, that is rajas, that means simultaneously in that moment there is tamas. So these two energies are always operating together. In other words, if I desire something, at the same time I fear of not getting something instead. Now we don't usually address this, do we? We just desire, but we don't think about why am I desiring? Isn't that your experience? You just want things, but you don't think about what am I actually fearing of not getting instead. So that means these energies are operating whether you acknowledge them or not. Now you'll also see that the vasanas are proportionally yellow. Now what do we say about yellow or sattvic vasanas? Like, what is a sattvic vasana? What is a sattvic tendency? A good tendency, like addiction to knowledge, like absolute knowledge, like the Bhagavad Gita or the Upanishads, or regular scriptural study, contemplation, reflection, meditation. These are all good vasanas. Reading, staying and thinking, pujas, you got prayers, you've got all sorts of vasanas, tendencies which imply something that is of the nature of care or care for the self. Whereas if you have the vasanas of Raja and Tamas, then that is about what can I get out of this world, or how can I do something. Let's go out and let's do something. Now it's very important to understand that I am not judging which of these energies are important. I'm not saying you should have more sattva or more rajas, or have a little bit more tamas. I'm just saying that they're always operating, and it's only useful to be aware of them operating in any one moment. Because just by your awareness, by your mindfulness, by your looking at yourself as a person, you can say, well, I'm very erratic right now, I'm very active, or I'm very clear, or I'm making a lot of mistakes, or I'm very dull. What does that mean? I'm very dull, I'm making a lot of mistakes, I am slow in my thinking. That means the fear is operating, the tamas is operating. So what does that mean in practical application? You got to ask yourself, how do I get myself out of this? That is where karma yoga comes in. By finding something that entails activity. That's how you get out of tamas. If a person feels dull, what is usually that we do in our life when we feel dull, when we feel tired? Isn't it funny? When we feel tired, we stay and we don't want to move. It's very hard to move out of that fatigue, out of that sort of inactivity. But what you should do instead is move out of that inactivity. How? By movement. That's what the red vasanas, which are nature of rajas. Only then, once there are enough rajas, can I then apply vasanas of what? The nature of contemplation, the nature of reflection, the nature of study, the nature of singing, the nature of prayer. So we can't skip from black to yellow. You see that? We need to go in order. So the point of karma yoga is to take us out of that fatigued, clouded, tired, lethargic state of just gloominess into something that's a little bit more active. And only from the activity can we then go forward and contemplate. Because think about it, if you're feeling tired all the time and you're trying to contemplate or sit down and meditate, what happens? We fall asleep. Yeah, so that means we need more rajas. The other thing we'll notice here is just a regular person in the world. It says here, looking for objects. What is a binding vasana? Think about that word binding. When something binds us, what does that imply? It's almost like we're a slave to it. It controls us whether we like it or not. So that means a binding vasana is that tendency which by its existence or by its presence in the moment is going to pull me into the external world, cause me to participate conducive to that vasana, which is why we have the mind, intellect, and ego going outwards. You see that? That's a giveaway. So that means the faculties of your manas, buddhi, ahamkara, and chitta, your memory, are all in accordance with what? Entertaining vasanas, which are about the world, which are about other things, which is why there's an arrow outwards. And what happens when we entertain things? Eventually it turns into a physical, practical actuality. We actually manifest it in our reality. Isn't that your experience? We entertain, and eventually we manifest it into our life. So what does this mean now in terms of our day-to-day life? That means if we still haven't addressed these tendencies which cause the mind, intellect, and ego to go out, then that means that's a direct proportion to how you're going to go, how slow or fast you're going to go or progress in this journey. You see? That means a very speedy, accelerated journey. What's the difference between one who goes in very fast and one who goes very slow? The one who goes very fast has worked on their mind, clear mind. The one who goes very slow is still spending 50% in the world and spending a little bit here and there contemplating wisdom. It doesn't work like that. So there's a proper order here. That's important to get. And I'm saying this over and over again because there's a tendency to go, you know, I like all of this. It sounds really great. But I still have attractions for the world. And so we kind of alternate between one or the other. Now, remember what a sannyasi is. A sannyasi is not someone who physically separates themselves away from the world. That means they're still with their wife, partner, children, job. It's the attitude. This is all but what 5 elements intelligently put together, whatever you see, including the thinker themselves, and it is caused by this one principle, Ishvara, and the truth of Ishvara is Sat Chit Ananda. Okay. Now let's look at a person who has worked on their minds, purified their minds through the means through the sadhana of karma yoga. what's the first thing we notice is, look at their vasanas. Mainly, predominantly sattvic. Which automatically means what? That the habits or the things that one does, this kind of person, karma yogi or a sannyasi, the things they do is of the nature, as Martin said, good. That is contemplative, reflective, studying the scriptures, reading, thinking about the verses, what do they mean, going into the actual depth of the statements.
Intentions in a higher place.
Well, I mean, higher, lower, right?
Well, yeah.
It's all Ishvara. Yeah. And see the mind, intellect, and ego? So that means the faculties of the manas, buddhi, ahamkara, and chitta, and the memory are all working and conspiring towards what? That sign, Atman. What did we say? Remember that sign of the Panchakosha, the 5 sheets? What was the most inner circle? Atman. That doesn't mean that the Atman is the smallest. It just means it's the subtlest. And that means the subtlest is that which pervades everything else that comes after it. So that means the ego, mind, and intellect are all turned inwards. Why? Because the vasanas of Raja and Tamas have been neutralized, thus they are no longer pulling the mind outwards. And what happens when there's nothing to look outwards anymore? The mind has no choice but to go inwards. It's a natural progression. Okay, now another thing that we'll see here is a state of samadhi. This is a self-realized person. Notice the black, red, and the yellow. It doesn't mean the self-realized person is purely sattvic. That's impossible. Because what do we say? Everything in the universe has these 3 gunas. 3 gunas are operating everywhere, all the time, in different proportions in any one moment. So that means even a self-realized person, a jivan muktaha, also has tamas, rajas, and clarity. So that means you're never going to get rid of these energies. That means even a self-realized person can feel dull, can feel lethargic, can feel slow, can feel erratic. And this is important to know because we sometimes have this image of what a jivan muktaha is. Like they're supposed to be divine, supposed to be sitting on an altar, supposed to be very calm, all of these ideas. But that's just wrong thinking. It doesn't work like that because they're not in control. The 3 gunas are always operating through all jivas. Yeah. The only difference is that the yellow, the sattva, is predominant. Why? Because they have worked on their minds constantly by turning inwards. How? Through the constant contemplation and attending to the scriptures. All right. Understanding, this is chapter 5, verse 8. Understanding of a sannyasi, a true renunciate. The organs automatically contact their objects. What organs? The 5 organs of knowledge, eyes, ears, skin, nose. The organs automatically contact their objects. So, you should not think, I am doing. That's an understanding of a sannyasi, that I am not doing. But isn't it our experience that we are doing? I'm sitting down, I'm listening, I'm thinking what this means, I'm doubting, I'm judging, I'm walking. Isn't that our usual experience? That I is the one that's doing? But here it says, you should not think that I am doing. So then why does our experience contradict actuality? Why does it actually contradict the experience, the truth that in actuality you are not doing? Yeah. So that means the ego owns the experience, the ahamkara, the doer enjoyer, owns the experience of the panchakosha and owns and says, this experience which is occurring in my 3 bodies or my 5 sheets is mine. Therefore, the I claims this experience belongs to me. And because that person has not been educated and has not been told or has not been differentiating the difference between ahamkara, the ego, and atman, then they have no choice but to associate the ego to the doer. Okay, now I want to speak about this idea that, I'll give you an example actually about emotions. How our emotions we own. We say, this is my emotion. And I want to speak specifically about anger. I want to tie it into this, and I'll get back into this, because anger is something that it's a general emotion which subsumes all these other small words like envy, jealousy, frustration, impatience. Even impatience is also one form or another of anger. And I want to show us how we get fooled thinking that this anger is something that we shouldn't have, which is a huge problem. It's a misunderstanding, and I'll show you through a mind map. So let's take Ishvara. Ishvara, the cause of this world, Jagat. Jagat means scheme of things. That means the total nature of things. That's Jagat, the world. What we need to know is, firstly, that all around us we have orders, different orders. That is, we got psychological order, biological order, electromagnetic order, gravitational order. All of these orders are operating right now on you as a person. Right now, gravity is pulling you down. Right now, the psychology of a human being is operating, and it's producing certain effects, like, let's say, an emotion, like, where is this going? Or how far, is this, how many other orders are there? Or whatever thoughts you're having. Now, the psychological order is where the emotion occurs. Let's just say the psychological order is where the emotion is present, because it's in the mind. So that means the emotion in the psychological order is a manifestation of Ishvara, because we said there is only Ishvara. So now, what does it mean when we say manifestation of Ishvara? Because it's a simple statement, it can just pass right by. What does it mean when we say manifestation of God? That this whole world is a manifestation of God. It means that, let's take your emotion. Your emotion is a manifestation or within the psychological order, which is another order of Ishvara. Gravitational is another order of Ishvara. But we'll just stick with the psychological. So that means whatever emotion is present in the psychological order, what do? We say, well, this emotion shouldn't be. I don't like this emotion. But what do we now say about manifestation of Ishvara? That means whatever is present, including the order, that's exactly where Ishvara is. So that means now even anger is what? Another manifestation of Ishvara. That means God is right where anger is. But how do we look at this? We look at this, well, if I think about something, let's say I think about a pumpkin, then the pumpkin appears in my mind, right? If I think about my mom, mom appears, but the pumpkin disappears. So how does this now tie in when we think about God? God is only present when I think about God. What's the problem with that statement? God is only present when I think about Ishvara. What does that do?
Ishvara is in thought.
Yeah. What does that mean? Well, simultaneously we say Ishvara is all pervasive, and now we are limiting God to what? Ishvara, to time and space. That means God only appears when he comes into my awareness. And yet we simultaneously say God is all pervasive, which implies God is all the time, everywhere, never not present. And yet we, say, I want to feel God, I want to experience God, I want to be in the presence of God. What does that mean? That God is not here right now. So that means these statements or this thinking reduces Ishvara to something that is not only away from me, but also subject to time. Because God wasn't here while I was thinking about the pumpkin. As soon as I stopped thinking about the pumpkin and started thinking about God, suddenly not only God got time, that is a beginning to it, but also He's got a place now because it's in my thought, which is a wrong thinking. Yeah. So that means we have to start being very cautious when we start thinking about God as that I can only feel God when I think about God. Or I need to pray 24/7. It's impossible to think about God 24/7. There's no way. You need to do your work in life. So this is about understanding that wherever or whatever emotion you're having, whatever thought you're having, that's exactly where God is. There is only Ishvara everywhere. You can never be outside of Ishvara. That means you could be doing the most mundane work. You just look around you, you're looking at other people, intelligent permutation combination put together, 5 elements by whom? By that all knowledge, all power Ishvara, and the truth of Ishvara is Sat Chit. In other words, we cannot look at Ishvara as an object. Because even the perceiver of Ishvara can only perceive because it itself is an intelligent composition of the 5 elements by Ishvara itself. That means wherever you are as a person, as a thought, as an emotion, that's exactly where Ishvara is. Wherever anger is, that's exactly where Ishvara is. That means we don't have to go, oh, I feel angry, I feel lost. I need to feel God because I feel angry. I feel so separate from God. No, because that anger is also not created by you. You didn't author anger. You didn't cobble up the emotion of anger. It was given to you. And what is given implies there's a giver. And the giver is Ishvara. Therefore, whatever you experience, including anger, itself is your access to Ishvara. That means you can even appreciate Ishvara in your anger. Yeah, this is important to say because there's this tendency to think Ishvara is something apart. And when I feel separate from the world, when I feel lost or confused, then I feel totally away from Ishvara. That's not true. Because even your thinking is another product of Ishvara. Yeah.
And that would be the same.
What's Maya?
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna bring the concept of Maya after this, because now we're going to start introducing Maya a little bit.
So that would be the same, using anger as one emotion, but also thoughts of a perverse nature. It doesn't matter how perverse, or how sick they may appear.
Yeah. Because those thoughts are still based and dependent on a psychological order. They still need a mind, and the mind I did not create.
Yeah. Which puts you back into karma yoga.
Karma yoga, yeah. That means no matter what experience you're having at any one moment, that's exactly where your access to Ishvara is. That's how you can appreciate Ishvara all the time. Okay. Anger is... so anger is just our own inner pain, depending on circumstances which were not addressed in the past. That's what anger is, basically. And when we experience anger, what usually happens is we carry that around until some person or the world triggers that. And then whomever is on the other side, that is an unfortunate victim of, we think that's our trigger. So then we associate our anger onto the person or onto the worldly object or even a thought.
But also, sorrow being the opposite of anger, brings it back in, usually bring it back
Yeah,
in.
because sorrow follows anger, yeah. And then sorrow causes one to contemplate if there's something more and is it worth being angry all the time. So it always brings oneself to think all over again. Yeah, sorrow follows anger. Okay, so that means that anger is triggered by the world or by objects. But it doesn't mean that the object or the world has the power to make you angry. No one has the power to make you angry. It's only the person themselves which allow themselves to make themselves angry. Why? Because they're not drawing boundaries. And as an adult, as a child, sure, we can justify our lack of discipline to not get angry. But as an adult, there is no excuse. As an adult, we have so many choices. We can't draw that line and say, I choose not to go, all the way. I choose not to victimize another person because ultimately this is my own stuff. This is my vasana. This is my tendency which was triggered by the external world or the object. So that means that as an adult, we now have to start owning that anger and recognizing that we can do something. Okay, now let's get back to the emotion of anger itself. What is our usual tendency, not for everyone, when there's an uncomfortable emotion? Especially if you're following the New Age world, especially today, only feel positive thoughts. Anything that is disempowering, just replace it with an empowering thought. That's the usual way to look at it. Now, if anger is a manifestation of Ishvara, then how does it make sense to push Ishvara away? If anger is also a manifestation of Ishvara. So what does that mean? If I'm experiencing anger and I refuse to feel anger fully and let it be to itself because it's present, and I apply techniques or trickery or alcohol or any kind of substances to cover it, what am I doing? I'm denying Ishvara. I'm saying no to Ishvara. Because the anger itself I did not create. The emotion which I'm experiencing in the moment, I did not create that. See what the problem is? If we try to push things away, we think we're doing something good to ourselves, but simultaneously we're actually distancing ourselves away from what matters most. Total acceptance, surrender to Lord.
The emotion has to be honored.
It has to be honored, that's great. That's a good word.
Well, it has to be tempered. I think temper is a good word here because the actual process of tempering.
Tempering?
Tempering.
Doesn't that imply modification?
No, it applies. It means it's interesting.
To me, it sounds like modification. We'll stick with honoring.
When you temper steel, you take it up to a very high temperature.
Yeah.
And then you actually cool it quickly, and that makes it harder. That's tempering steel.
Okay.
So I'm thinking that as a behaviour thing, where the anger is building up to a heat. If you want to do an analogy together, because I'm thinking out loud.
Okay.
But if that anger is building up as an emotion, at some point that's got to convert into a behavioural action.
We will, yeah.
This is where the tempering has to take place.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that actually, how to, we've talked about that the anger is present. Now let's talk about how to deal with this, because we cannot go without the solution.
What a worried people here tonight.
So we're both going to honor it and we're also going to temper it. Okay. So that means, once again, there is nothing wrong with the emotion of anger. Now we know why. Because no matter what emotion it is a manifestation of Ishvara. So that means if there is anger or frustration, one should not think there's something wrong with me, or I'm not holy, or I'm distancing myself away from Ishvara, or I'm a bad person. It's got nothing to do with that. You didn't even create anger. You didn't even create the faculty which is experiencing anger, the subtle body. You're just experiencing the anger. Why? Because the anger is known to you, Sat Chit awareness. That means you cannot help yourself but to experience whatever is occurring in the Panchakosha or the three bodies. You will feel it one way or another because you are Sat Chit, existence awareness. And existence awareness is always existing and being aware of whatever experience is occurring in it. So that means you have to start seeing this not only as the emotion which is authored by Ishvara, but also anger, whatever emotion you want to talk about, it belongs to a different order of reality. Mithya, changing. When anger does become extremely wrong, we say there's nothing wrong with anger, but when it does become wrong, is when we take out anger onto other people. Think about that. Because other people, they weren't doing anything. Like, it was our stuff. And so when we take out anger on other people, what are we doing? Himsa. That's a violation of Samanya Dharma. That means we're now causing injury to those which don't deserve injury at all. Well, it wasn't their fault, it's my stuff. That means you need to own your stuff and keep it to yourself. That's when anger does become, capital letters, wrong. You see? Now let's talk about how to express anger in the right way.
You should bring my wife here.
Okay, we're going to introduce two new words. Sanskrit has beautiful, there's no word you won't find in Sanskrit. And I'll start with damaha and shamaha. I'll explain what that means. Damaha is, in regards to an emotion, is self-discipline. Now, what does self-discipline in the context of damaha mean? It means, or in the context of anger, it means that despite this anger being present, I choose as a person not to victimize anyone, the world, my parents, whether it is mental or physical, I choose not to victimize it. That's damaha. That means it's self-discipline not to allow oneself to lash out physically or even mentally contemplate hurting someone, because that is still himsa, whether it's physical or mental. You understand? Yeah. So then how do we do this in practical application? Like, how do we apply this in real life? Very good statement to remember. You can try, you see what happens. When you're angry, whatever emotion is coming up, and your family is there, your child is there, or your spouse is there, you can just say, I am angry now, I will talk to you later. Think about how much courage that takes to say. Or maybe not, but maybe for someone it's easy. I am angry now, you're being honest. I am angry now, I will talk to you later. Don't say I'm angry at you.
You made me angry.
Yeah, or you made me angry. Then that's a definite fight. Yeah, but just keep it general. I'm angry right now, so it's my stuff. I'm owning my stuff. I'm angry now, I will talk to you later. Not even, and just keep the face normal, neutral, without any implications, no body language giveaways. So that means that it's something very simple, but it takes a lot of courage to say this, look, because you're being honest. I'm angry now, just let me cool off, I need to get my sattva back, because when there's anger, there's a lot of rajas. There's a lot of rajas and tamas, and that clouds one's intellect and one's judgment. So it's hard to make a proper assessment as to what really went on here.
But if you put angry from neutral to massively angry on a scale of 0 to 10,
Yeah.
at what stage are you talking about? Level 1 that you do that, or level 9?
That's, yeah, right. Now we're complicating things. I think the level that would require you to say that. For example, level 5, you can still have a decent conversation.
Or does that depend upon the other person, how they're receiving the anger at the time, if they're able to cope with it or not? That's
also a variable. The point is we've got a lot of variables, but even if they're responding properly and they're clear, you may not be clear. So it's like, you can't have a two-way conversation unless one is, totally tamasic in that moment.
Sometimes I'm talking to my wife and the kids will say, stop fighting. We don't want to, we're not fighting, we're just talking.
Oh, wow. Maybe it's become normal, huh? Maybe the kids see something.
And what's the difference in a robust conversation and an argument?
Yeah.
Well, it's a question because kids are very sensitive. I'm really now thinking maybe the kids got something that's worthy of consideration. I am angry now, I'll talk to you later. Okay. it's also nice to say this to your whole family in advance, because think about a daddy who's coming home, and the family doesn't know whether it's a hungry tiger or a cuddling puppy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like creates an uncertain situation in the family. So that means we need to be clear in our communication in the family. Especially children love this. When we say to our child, "Hey, look, if Daddy says to you, I am angry, I'll talk to you later. Please just honor that and don't talk to him, and he'll come back to you." And then the child will love that, because they love to call out their parents. "Hey, Mommy, you're angry. Hey, Daddy, you're angry." Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think the answer to the previous conundrum was that when you recognise in your own being that you're only going to go in one direction with your emotion from this point,
Yeah.
and you're not going to go backwards. You're going to go further into a higher degree of anger, whatever happens.
Yeah.
You've passed the point of no return. So
That's a good self-commitment you can make to yourself. Yeah. And sometimes you just got to wait it out, because while there's Rajas and Tamas operating, it's very hard to move forward. So we just have to wait it out sometimes. Okay, one thing not to say is, I want to be free from anger. Oh, please, Lord. This is not what not to say. Please, Lord, please take away my anger. What does that imply? Oh, please, Lord, I do not want to be angry anymore.
You are wrong.
Yeah.
Ishwara, you are wrong.
Yeah. Why are you taking away something that is Ishwara?
Denying facts.
Yeah. See, everything is Ishwara here, including anger. See, it's our stuff that we don't want to hold on to anger. It's our problem. Ishwara is going to give us anger one way or another. It doesn't care. It's an impersonal creation here. So we can't ask, please take away this, because my preferences, my vasanas don't like it. See, it's our likes and dislikes that are then taken on the show. So that means we need to honor, as Gareth said, our emotions being present and let them be.
I guess it's the consequences of the anger is that we're trying to avoid.
The application of the anger.
Yeah, well, let's talk about how to avoid the consequences, or how to manage them through the second principle, which is shamaha. So we talked about dhammaha, which is self-discipline. We know what dhammaha means now, yeah? Okay, let's move on to shamaha. Shamaha obviously means now how to manage anger appropriately. The answer is, let's go back to that, never victimize another. That means express anger in whatever form you wish, whatever is personal, however it makes sense. Everyone's got different ways of expressing anger. We don't have to share it, but we all do have certain ways. Continue that, just do not let others be on the receiving end, and whether it's direct or indirect. Because sometimes if we punch a wall and someone sees us in a distance, they get pretty worried. They get concerned, and then you stuff up their entire day. That means express your anger however you wish, but just don't let others see, because it's your stuff. Scream in the car, please, not outside where neighbors are going to hear some drunk person, going to get worried, because then they were fine. Let's say someone's having a birthday party and some person shouts on top of their lungs to express their anger. So we just broke their day. So that means do it in your own space. Don't let others see it, because even if it's indirect, guess what? I just caused himsa indirectly, which is something that nobody would appreciate. Even if you didn't intend to hurt me, but I accidentally saw you punching the wall or the bag or screaming, then that's going to trigger a lot of stuff in me, right? So that means keep it to yourself. One way is, write it out and use the words that you feel like. Just be honest to yourself. If that's what's required, then do that. Just be honest. You're not trying to hide anything. And then don't show the letter to anyone. Throw it away, basically. So that means never let anyone see this emotion, but you can still fully exercise this emotion because it is Ishvara. There's nothing to take away. And ironically, the funny thing is, once we express our anger properly, fully, any psychologist will tell you anger needs to be properly expressed, only then does its power in the future and from there on subside. But if we hold it in and we try to justify it and we try to do this whole new age spin on it, no, just think positive. Guess what? You're going to succeed in that moment, but you haven't cured the root cause. We're about curing the root cause. And how do you cure the root cause? By addressing it in the moment. Because that's what's asking for your attention in the now. So that means anger is asking for my attention now. I address anger in the now, which is what fixes the root cause, or at least subsides it for the future. Yeah.
I think the more you're aware of yourself going through that process, the less effect it has every time. In other words, the cause-effect thing just almost dissipates completely.
Exactly, which is why...
I find it very difficult. I sometimes have to make myself get angry because it's appropriate in that situation to show anger. I can't be bothered,
Yeah. I relate to that. You got to pretend, right? Like even for children, you got to pretend like you're angry, but you're not really angry. Yeah. So that means this whole anger thing is what pretty much, excessive anger, unfixed anger. It's what represents the circle. We're always taking our minds, intellects outwards, and it's triggering our vasanas. And because we're not allowing ourselves to fully own and honor this anger, then it just keeps causing the intellect, mind, and ego to just keep going outwards. So that means one who has worked through their emotions, in an example which I've shared, not limited to, but just one example, eventually this anger and these emotions, whether they're from the past, buried unconscious, whether they're present, eventually, as Martin's saying, they dissipate over time, which is what turns the mind and intellect and ego automatically within. So what is the message here in summary? The message in summary is there is no skipping jiva work. There is no skipping thoughts and emotions. Yeah? Yes, it is all mithya, we get that. It is all a vikara, modification. But that's the irony. Even though I am sat chit, if I deny one aspect of the entire existence, I will never arrive to sat chit.
Viva la jiva.
Yeah. All right. So now we'll return here. The organs automatically contact their objects, so you should not think I am doing. While you are seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, walking, sleeping, breathing, talking, releasing, grasping, opening, and closing the eyes. Now this is an understanding of a sannyasi. Why do they understand and they think that, and know that they are not the doers? Because sannyasi knows what we've been discussing, for example, the panchakosha, the three bodies, an intelligent composition put together, and it all belongs to the order of mithya, and I don't control mithya. Why? Because I'm not the author of anything. Tell me one thing that you created in this universe. One thing.
Baby.
Baby, that's easy. Even a baby, huh?
What about just normal brainstorming thoughts, creativity in your own mind? You can't say that is yours.
Yeah, you can't say that's yours because that is not yours, because first of all you need the faculty of the mind in order to have and to own and to experience creativity and clarity and innovation. You need a brain, you need a body first. And the body wasn't created by you, because we don't even know how to fix our body when we get sick, even though the body's with us 24/7. And even when there's a conception, the father just, is food basically, and the father connects with the woman, and the sperm, which the father didn't certainly create, but the father had in there, and does a certain, protocol, a certain procedure, which lasts for so long, and then circumstances take over from then on. The egg splits into 2, 4, 16 and onwards. The mom didn't do any of that. And then eventually the baby grows into a fully mature baby with the umbilical cord. The mom didn't attach that to the baby. It was all there. It was all given. The order, the biological order, the chemical order, the electromagnetic order, all of these orders were just provided. And all the parents there would just eat food. and everything else took care of itself. And even that, eating food, is what preserves your prana, your anandamaya kosha, your annamaya kosha, which is your pranamaya kosha. And the pranamaya kosha is sustained by your food, and without the pranamaya kosha, there is no intellect, there is no mind. Stop eating for 14 days and tell me how clear you are. Huh? Stop eating for 14 or 15 days and tell me if you can recall your life or something specific. Most of your memory is going to go away in that time. We have this beautiful between Udalaka and Shvetaketu from Chandogya Upanishad, and the father, Udalaka, says, stop eating for 14 days and tell me if you can recite the entire Vedas. Because Shvetaketu was one of the smartest kids. He was in school for 12 years. He knew the whole Vedas back and forth. And he came and he was like, hey dad, look what I know. And then father said to him, has the teacher taught you that knowledge, knowing which the unknown and the known is known? Has the teacher taught you that knowledge, knowing which both the known and the unknown becomes the known? The heard and the unheard becomes the heard. Shvetaketu is like, what's that? What kind of knowledge is that? That means Shvetaketu learned the entire Vedas and he didn't know about the basic principle of consciousness. So now you're asking, how can I know what I don't know? How can I hear what I don't hear? Conundrum, right? No, really. You can only ask that if you are looking at it from the angle of mithya, from relative knowledge. From the knowledge of absolute, that knowledge which is all pervasive, both the unheard and the unknown become the known. Why? Because everything is consciousness, tat tvamasi. You are that consciousness which pervades both the known and the unknown. So anyway, this is Chandogya Upanishad. It's very beautiful, and I'll do a separate
so that
session on
means it's
it.
either in potential or in manifest. If it's known as in consciously, known as in manifest.
Both.
But if it's not, if in that case you don't have 14 days and you can't recall anything, well, you still know it because you've heard it.
No, this is not chitta. This is not suddenly knowing like Ishvara, all knowing and all knowledge. This is, see, it's very tricky to explain this because it is knowing everything as me, but at the same time not relatively. For example, right now I don't know how to fix a car. I don't know how to fix a car, a rocket engine. But the knowledge of the absolute Sat Chit, that knowledge says that no matter what I look at is 5 elements intelligently put together by Ishvara, and the truth of Ishvara is Sat Chit, which I am, which you are. Therefore, the knowledge of the self automatically causes one to know everything, but not relatively. You understand that statement? It's a tricky one. Because now we think we're supposed to know, a self-realized person is supposed to know the entire universe. That's impossible. A jiva is limited to just what the jiva knows. Only Ishvara can know everything. But at the same time, if the person recognizes that the entire existence is me, then what is there to know if the entire existence is me?
Back to the wave in the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes time to unfold. I'm not going to do it because it's a whole different Upanishad. Okay. So the awareness, I never performs any action. That's what the understanding of a sannyasi is. Okay, so that means the awareness, I, is not the doer. So then you ask, who is the doer? Or who performs the action?
Ishvara.
Yeah, Ishvara. So now we have to talk about this more because the key to moksha is understanding that you are not the doer. Okay. Holy dedication. Chapter 5, verse 10. Brahmanya dhyaya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti yaha lipyate nasa papena padma patram ivam bhasa. Okay, if you act after you have offered your actions to me, take note of the capital Me, if you act after you have offered your actions to me, you will not be affected by agitation. Just like a lotus leaf is untouched by water. Karma yogis let go of attachment to results and act with the body, mind, and intellect to purify the mind. The life of karma yoga leads to inner freedom, while a life motivated by desire for worldly objects leads to bondage. Okay. If you act after you have offered your actions to me, what could this be saying?
You've already accepted that you don't own the actions, they're Ishvara's.
Or you're
Very
not,
good.
And the results, you're not going to be attached to the results of those actions. So just you're going to have a desire to do an action, and once you've got the action in activity,
Yeah.
you're going to then be ambivalent to the results.
That means you're living in truth. You're already understanding that whatever results, whatever actions I'm giving,
Allow the universe to bring it back.
whatever results I'm giving is not only done by this person who is also Ishvara, of Ishvara, an object of Ishvara, but also this person, this Jiva, is contributing to the Dharma field, to Ishvara field. Therefore, this understanding that everything is Ishvara presupposes that that person does not think that I am giving anything or to anyone other than Ishvara. Thus, if you act after you have offered your actions to me, in other words, if you do things for the world before, that is, you've already understood that everything is me, that is consciousness, you will not be affected by agitation. Why not? Because if I do not understand that everything is Ishvara, then my understanding only can be one other option. Whatever results I get are for me. And whatever actions I put out are my responsibility. That means my responsibility, my karma, my results. You understand? And that causes constant worry because we never know what we're going to get from our actions. We never know if our actions have done the best for ourselves, but also for the world. So we're constantly agitated, thinking, is this going to work out? Is this not going to work out? Is this going to fail? Could have I done better? So there is no break for such a person who is constantly thinking about all actions are onto me versus instead of onto the entire field, which I, the doer, Jiva, am not apart from. That means ultimately, whether you're thinking you're doing for yourself or not, you're actually ultimately doing for yourself because you are the whole. But you can only say that once you understand that you are the whole. See the paradox? Yeah.
Could that be the answer to that question before? What is it that you create? The only thing you can create is karma. Is the karma.
Yeah, as a person, through your choices.
But then don't make a projection on what you think that karma is.
And why do you create karma? Because, remember the circle? How the mind, intellect goes out? It's constantly attending to worldly activities. And every time we attend to worldly activities, it produces results which we have to then attend to fix them. If I, let's say, put so much money into the stock market and I'm the doer, then whatever I get back, that was my responsibility. So now I have to fix that. So that keeps me constantly engaged in worldly activity. Yeah. So that's how this doer gets tricked into constantly attending to worldly things and therefore generating more karma, which they have to address in the future, or whether it's adrishta, unseen, or drishta, seen. All right. Just like a lotus leaf is untouched by water. In other words, such a person is like a lotus leaf. You've seen a lotus leaf? Very beautiful. And when the drops fall onto, we don't have one here. When the drops of water fall onto the lotus leaf doesn't suck the water. It just slides right off. That's a self-realized person. Or even a sannyasi, or even a karma yogi. Whereas a worldly person, they absorb all the impact. So they get filled with all of these responsibilities and it becomes really heavy and hard to bear. Yeah. Whereas a sannyasi, or a karma yogi who knows that everything is Ishvara and constantly discharging their duties and activities to the field of Ishvara, simply whatever happens, well, it just slides right off. Why? You can only have that kind of experience when you know that everything is Ishvara. None of it was yours to begin with. You don't own anything in this world.
That's a good analogy if you even go one further and talk about polluted water that's toxic, taking that in and absorbing it and bearing it and harboring it.
Yeah. Karma yogis let go of attachment to results and act with the body, mind, and intellect to purify the mind. Okay, so what we're talking about is karma yogis are acting with a pure heart. That is, their focus is the truth. And anything that is of the nature of the truth is purifying the mind. Anything that is the nature of taking for myself from the world only, ironically, does provide pleasure in the moment, but the expense of that is it provides agitation little by little. You understand? The life of karma yoga leads to inner freedom, while a life motivated by desire for worldly objects leads to bondage. Because why? If I put my joy into vikara object, which is ever changing, then the state of that object, which was at its peak when I put my joy into it, that peak is going to, because of the nature of the object, going to go and change with the nature and the changing nature of the object. Isn't that true if you think about it? We always get attached to something when it's at its peak, when it's at its best. And then we want to hold that relationship with that object when it was at its best. But that is impossible because the object which we are attached to is changing. So that means that peak that we appreciate so much and are holding on to for our joy is going to go right along with the changing nature of the object. Whether it's your spouse, your bank account, your own body, your own intellect, relative knowledge, anything. So that means the one who is constantly holding on to objects is by that nature, not just one object, but many objects in the world, in bondage. It is constantly worried about trying to maintain the state or bring that peak state of that object because, it's clearly not that anymore. So I'm trying to invest my time and effort to bring it back. And that means one's life goes into that kind of constant rejuvenating, replenishing an object which by its nature is going to change anyway. Yeah. All right, next topic. The self is not a doer. This is key to moksha, to understand that you as the self are not the doer. Because as long as we believe we are the doer, what is a doer? Constantly changing, vikara. It's mithya. That means constantly attending to the changing nature of the world. There is no stability. There is no sense of ease in a world of constant change. So that means that one keeps constantly not only agitated, but also not free. Because moksha is freedom from objects. That's what moksha means. Freedom from dependence on objects for my happiness. Think about that definition. That means one is no longer depending on happiness from objects. That's what moksha is. Including their own body. including the fact that they're going to die one day. Yeah. The self is not a doer. Okay. Okay, we talked about the mechanics. When I say Ishvara, I'm talking about everything underneath the line, okay? We talked about the mechanics of Ishvara, and the Ishvara is what creates the objects of the world. And you are, as a person, just one of those objects in the world. Just like of the entire ocean, there are so many waves, and every wave is an object, and where does the object, to whom does the object belong? To the ocean. In other words, there is no wave independent of the ocean. Okay? So that means that whatever objects we're talking about, whether we're talking about physical objects, sentient objects, or insentient objects, they all belong to the one same source, the ocean, or Ishvara. So that's why. So let's now arrive to the knowledge of Ishvara is the doer using this ocean analogy. Okay. When there is a wave, a high wave or a low wave, who is the cause of that? Yeah, Ishvara. When there is, when the wave is apart from the ocean, where is the wave going back to? When the wave, let's say a wave goes like very high up, because of what did the wave reach a tsunami level? What was the reason? Did the wave do that by itself? Yeah. Okay, so the wind and so many other factors of the ocean, that means the waves next to it, other oceans from far away, you know, big waves bringing and maybe colliding and creating a pressure point. So, yeah, and so many circumstances happened in order to create this big, ginormous wave. And those circumstances are a series of causes which is impossible to trace because it is just too complex for the human mind. And then what we see is the final effect, which is the jiva, having a very high point of its life or a very low point of its life. It doesn't really matter. The point is, it's that point, whichever point that is, because of these endless series in this entire field of Jagat, the world, manifestation of Ishvara, that has caused every single individual to be what they are now. Just like all of these circumstances have caused in the ocean for the wave to be its distinct, unique, its unique signature in that moment. So we have to start seeing that Ishvara is the doer of this entire Jagat, this entire manifestation that we see. And I'm going to keep repeating this in different ways because it literally is the key to moksha, to let go of this idea that you are right now listening, that you are right now sitting in the chair. Yes, from the relative perspective, mithya, absolutely, let's not deny that. But you got to understand, okay, so let's take it from the point of view. Right now, who is sitting actually? Are you sitting? You means what? Consciousness. Are you sitting?
No.
So who's sitting then?
Jiva.
The jiva. And what's the jiva made out of?
Drowsy body.
And where's the experience of listening happening right now?
The intellect.
In the subtle body. Intellect's involved. Right now, the emotions are involved. Your memory, your chitta is involved. Because right now, if I say something, how do you understand the English language? Because your memory is operating all the time. Otherwise, you won't understand the language. So that means your memory is operating right now, your chitta, your manas, your feelings about this room, about this talk. You are having discrimination, judgment, assessment, evaluation about what I'm saying right now. That's your buddhi, your intellect. And it is owned by all these components. Your manas, your buddhi, and your chitta are owned by ahamkara, the I doer, that is the I sense, in order to own that experience, because someone has to own your experience. Someone has to own your thoughts.
That's the ego.
That's the ego. If you don't have your ego, then you won't recognize if my thoughts are your thoughts or your thoughts are my thoughts. You understand? So ego is just another faculty in the subtle body. It's nothing special about it. It's just that which isolates your subtle body to just your jiva. That's it. The problem is we associate that ego to the I. So we have to start understanding that ego is nothing but the experiencer of the experience, which is input through the 5 organs of action, processed by the mind, goes to the intellect to discern what does this mean, uses the memory in order to extract from the past so he doesn't have to recalculate the situation all over again, and then is translated or is influenced by the vasanas, because the vasanas now tell me how to respond out of the intellect, manas, and the memory working together, and then the final output goes back to the mind. The mind sends it to the ego, and then the ego sends it to the 5 organs of action, and then you use your mouth to finally say whatever you say. So all of this is now going on, and we're totally oblivious to it. So that means we have to know what a jiva is and how this whole process happens. What's happening right now that you're sitting down? Because once you start to know yourself as a jiva operating, then you can start to recognize what is anatma, not self. Do you get it? So in other words, we first have to understand what is the person before we can start to discriminate the person as not me. It's not just a matter of going, oh, not I, not I, not I. What are you saying no to? You have to know what you're saying no to. And the person, the jiva, belongs to mithya. How do we know? Because mithya means ever-changing, apparently real. It's always a constant variable, and your body's always changing. Look how many times this arm is moving around. Everything's changing. But what is the one single principle that is being constant from the moment you walked into the door all the way now? The one principle which hasn't changed, the awareness. And the awareness thus is Sat Chit, existence awareness. How do we know? How do we prove that? Do you exist right now? You can't deny that. And are you aware of your existence? Absolutely. Now, are you not only aware of your existence, but what are you also aware of? Your subtle body. If you hurt yourself right now, that's your body pain, and your subtle body picked that up. But not only did you experience the pain, but you also, amidst of that, parallel to that pain, you also didn't stop existing, did you? That means you always exist, and with parallel to your existence, not only do you exist and are you always aware of your existence, which is Sat Chit, but you are also aware of whatever experience is going on in your body. Thus, Satya plus Mithya are never inseparable. That is why you will never experience anything other than what you're already experiencing. That's why we say moksha is not something out there, it's just recognizing what you're experiencing is exactly all there is to this existence. You as a self-evident I, and you as the jiva, which is experiencing emotions and thoughts and feelings in this moment, depending on the situations which are being input through your 5 organs of action. So moksha means this, what I'm speaking of, permanent. That means it's not on and off anymore. It's still on and off in the beginning stages, we understand that. Why? Because there's rajas and tamas operating, still the mind's not completely clear. But eventually it becomes so clear, so constant, that it's just obvious. It's just pretty obvious. We don't need reminders anymore. So that is the goal here. Yeah. All right. One thing I also want to mention here is, see, many systems, and if you've been in the spiritual world, you'll know about quite a few systems out there, do not mention this simple principle of Ishvara. For example, Neo-Advaita, just skip Maya. Just skip, just all changing, just go to the self, the unchanging. Stay there. It doesn't work. We explain now why it doesn't work. Because there's still a person. You see? There are 2 realities operating all the time. The reality of Mithya, the reality of Satya. And Advaita Vedanta is the only system I know personally which talks about and accounts Ishvara into the equation. if you don't know Ishvara, if you do not know God, which is the cause of all these changes, it is impossible to recognize oneself as the unchanging. Because they're going to go, I am unchanging, but then why do I see differences in the world? Right? So it's a contradiction, it's a total confusion. So you can see the beautiful order. We first have to go through the jiva, get to know the jiva, get to know Ishvara, the cause of the world, and then the final part, I am the unchanging, is super easy. Yeah, which is why I'm bringing so much attention to Ishvara. Okay. Chapter 5, verse 13. When the indweller is self-controlled and indifferent to the results of its actions, it lives happily in the body, neither acting or causing others to act. Beautiful statement. Verse 13. Okay. When the indweller, let's go from the indweller right into lives happily in the body. What does that sound like to you? An indweller who lives happily in the body.
Subtle body?
Well, the whole body, the subtle body included, yeah. What could the indweller be? The indweller who lives happily, it's a nice way to say it, it's not entirely the self, yeah, called Atman. Remember the concentric circles of the 5 Panchakosha? Atman is, you could say, from that point of view, the indweller who lives happily in the body, the human body. So when the indweller is self-controlled, how is the indweller self-controlled? Of course, through the help of the body. You can't control Atman. Atman is Brahman. Brahman is consciousness, attributeless. But Brahman living through the 3 bodies is Atman, that indweller. How do you control that indweller? Karma Yoga. We talked about that. When the indweller is self-controlled and indifferent to the results of its actions, what does that sound like? Karma Yoga, the spirit of Karma Yoga. And why would they be indifferent to the results of their actions? What would cause you to right now be indifferent, not apathetic? I'm not talking about...
Not attached to the outcome.
And what would cause you to not be attached to the outcome? What would you have to understand not to be attached to the outcome?
It doesn't belong to you.
Very good. It is all Ishvara. Yeah. When the indweller is self-controlled and indifferent to the results of its actions, it lives happily in the body, neither acting or causing others to act. Why does it say neither acting? How can an indweller who lives happily in the body not act?
The body is acting.
Very good. The body is acting. That means Brahman is acting through 3 bodies, which we call Atman. Atman thus is Brahman. Atman is just a term we use to refer when consciousness is operating or seemingly conditioned by the 3 bodies. The word seemingly conditioned is worthy of taking note. I said seemingly conditioned, not actually conditioned, but seemingly conditioned.
So is Atman Ishvara manifesting from Brahman? Is that a way of thinking or saying?
Okay. Atman is Brahman operating through the 3 bodies. Who created the 3 bodies? Ishvara. Yeah. When the indweller is self-controlled, that means when the self-real, this is talking about a sannyasi, a person who has released certain needs for the world, attachments to the world. When the indweller is self-controlled and indifferent to the results of its action, it lives happily in the body, neither acting. Who is acting? The body is acting, just like the wave in the ocean appears to be acting. And if the wave doesn't know about the ocean and the water, the H2O, the wave is then going to automatically assume I'm acting. That's why knowledge of both the ocean, that is Ishvara, and H2O, or you could say water, I just say H2O, is Brahman. Is neither acting, so we're not talking about a lazy person here who's not doing anything. We're talking about understanding. Yes, the body is moving, the body is talking, but it's not I who's doing it. I am conscious, I am awareness of this body, which is a combination, a permutation intelligently put together by this all-knowledge, all-power called Ishvara, which has created this jiva, whose name is Andre, but this jiva is not me. I am the awareness of this jiva.
Yeah, so you're not allowing the ego to actually come in and take over the action.
Yeah. Now, at the same time, I said the awareness, the jiva is not me. We have to also come into another teaching. That's a dualistic statement. If I say the jiva is not me, why?
Because that's renouncing part of you, which is you.
Yes, yes. So we only say that in reference for understanding, then we let go of that teaching. You see? So that means I say the jiva is not me, not I, the three bodies, emotion is not I. And when you've done that sufficiently as to have total clarity who is that unchanging principle, then there is no need to keep discarding the anatma, that is the not self, as if it's something apart from you. Because ultimately it is also nothing but water, nothing but H2O, nothing but consciousness, which you are. Manifesting in different permutations, combinations, ever changed, ever different by this great power, all knowledge and all power called Ishvara, which is never going to stop. That's why we're not trying to end anything. We're not trying to come to the end of some journey. There is no ending to anything. It's just acknowledging, understanding that what is present right now is the truth. And it's never going to be different other than what it is right now. That's where the freedom comes. The freedom is not somewhere out in the future, because what does that imply? That moksha is in the future, because that's our thinking, right? I'm not in light, I'm not going to use any word. There is no moksha now, but moksha is at some point in the future once I hear the teachings. What's incorrect about that statement?
Separate.
Yeah, you're giving time, space to Ishvara. You're giving time, space to consciousness. You're isolating consciousness and removing the word all-pervasive, omniscient, omnipresent away from consciousness. Consciousness is you. You can never be apart from who you are, consciousness. So there is no such thing as moksha over there. Moksha is just a term to refer to the understanding that what reality is, I already am. But that only comes through understanding jiva, understanding Ishvara, and what is the jiva's relationship to Ishvara and Brahman. We have to understand what is the relationship between them. Without the relationship, then it's all just a part. Ishvara has its own reality, Brahman has its own reality, and the jiva has its own reality. No, there's only the ocean. Yes, there is the waves, there are different waves, permutations, combinations. Yes, there is an ocean, but no matter how many waves there are and how big and beautiful the ocean is, ultimately there is no ocean and there is no wave without what? H2O. And that H2O you are. So it's just a matter of understanding, not trying to experience something, because what does experience imply? Future points. Once again, isolating consciousness to some point in the future. It's understanding what you are right now, that is all there is to this reality. Whereas the ego, which is the doer and enjoyer, constantly likes to experience. Why? In order to enjoy. So thus, what is the spiritual world about? Trying to experience kundalini raising, aligning your chakras, trying to achieve some mega orgasmic nirvikalpa samadhi, trying to experience all these wonderful things. You will just not believe how many things there are in the spiritual world, all about trying to give you some experience in the future point in time, which is implying that you are not already whole and complete right now. Can you improve the ocean? No. What is there to improve? Because whoever tries to improve the ocean is also made out of the ocean. So they're not contributing to anything. They're just adding onto what's already present. But they're imagining like they're trying to fix something. This is called jiva srishti, my own projections, like I'm adding something to this universe. In other words, all there is the ocean, and the wave is the jiva, and the jiva has to simply understand that yes, I do look like a form called a wave, and yes, there is this massive, beautiful ocean, but despite the wave and the ocean, without water, neither the ocean nor the wave can exist. That means the wave and the ocean depend on the water, but the water doesn't depend on the ocean nor the wave. That's why you're free already. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May all be happy. May all be free from illness. May all behold good things. May no one suffer. Peace. Okay, any questions, comments, observations, or anything you want to share about this session?
It gets a bit complex with the free will idea. So basically what I'm putting together is that free will is Ishvara as well. So,
yes.
So really what I imagine to be, I'm going to make this decision and do something differently, is not really me the doer, it's Ishvara's offering something to me.
Yeah, you see, from the reality of Satyam, there is no such thing as free will.
Yeah.
From the reality of Mithya, I would say you have free will. Yeah. So that means we're not trying to dismiss free will, because that's disempowering. You took your free will to come here, right? It's not a straight answer. There is free will, there is not free will. You have to first know these two realities. From the reality of the absolute, free will is just another object, like an emotion or a tree. But from a person who's working in this world, exercise your free will all you want.
So when you're killing something, who is killing?
Huh?
When you're killing something.
When you're cleaning something. Killing something.
If you're a hunter and you're killing.
Who's killing?
Yeah, is he talking about the food? Killing for food, An
animal?
No.
A person?
No, not a person.
No.
Well, it could be anything.
Is Ishvara doing the killing?
Okay, so see, once again, it's not a straight answer, because if I say yes, then that means that I'm discarding the jiva. So the way to answer this is, Ishvara is providing the faculty to do or perform that action in the form of psychological order, in the form of biological order, in the form of the limbs being put together, and all of these principles are operating together, and also the air is being breathed by the jiva, and the mind is working, electromagnetic pulses are firing on and off. All of these orders, complex orders, are put together, and the environment itself, by its response, I am witnessing, and the environment is entering my five organs, and I'm processing that environment through the eyes of my tendencies. That is, if I've acted like that before, then I'm going to act like that now. And then finally, that decision by the intellect now sends that signal back to the ego. The ego owns that experience, and that experience gets sent through the five organs of action, and then I say, I'm killing. Yeah. See, I can't answer it directly, because then it's not a full, there's so much going on. So, so the summary, it's a combination of principles, orders, Ishvara's orders put together. I'll give you a simple example. What causes the wind to blow?
Sun.
Pressure.
Does it? That's a good fact. Okay, we'll just generalize it. Let's say different currents put together from different areas, and they're all interacting together, and then you're standing in one place in Melbourne, and you're experiencing this effect which started off thousands of miles away, and we give this effect the name, the label called killing. That means this is just an effect of so many causes, no different than the waves movement is an effect of thousands of causes that preceded it based on so many other variables in the ocean. So that means we always attach a name and a label in order to comprehend our reality. It doesn't matter what the name or the label is. We have to attach a name and a label to comprehend it. Wind, heat, but all of it, whether it's wind, heat, whatever it is just a name label, one more name label added to what? To that which is all pervasive, that is the H2O. That is, we add name label to one wave, add name and label to another wave, add name label to another, and we are just living in this world of names and forms and labels. And the way to interact with this world, we have to attach these names to it.
That ultimately has no attributes.
So ultimately it has no attributes, yeah. Yeah, sure, in the kitchen, help yourself.
Question, I think, is there any advice about how to have a relationship with Ishvara? Should you call him Lord or Father God? What sort
I love that question because it really just brings what we spoke about into a summary. Remember at the beginning how I said that everything is a manifestation of Ishvara? And then I asked the question, what does it mean to say manifestation of Ishvara? It means that whatever is manifested, including your thought or your willingness to have a relationship with Ishvara, that's exactly where you will find Ishvara. That means including my thought of wanting to have a relationship with Ishvara, that thought is also Ishvara. My willingness to have a relationship with anyone, my willingness, my desire is also Ishvara. That means Ishvara is the closest thing, or no thing, just the closest principle which you will find right here, right now, in any thought, in any emotion. So the answer to that is how? By recognizing that whether you try to have a relationship with Ishvara or not, you're still having a relationship with Ishvara. It's an understanding. You see, so in other words, trying to have is actually more damage than not.
Yeah, because you're trying to objectify it.
Yeah, I'm trying to objectify God into time and space.
You're trying to give it boundaries. In other words, is Ishvara my mate, and I contemplate like my mate, or is it like a king, and I try and imagine what a king is and the boundaries and the maryadas of a king?
Yeah.
Well, I guess another feeling is an understanding, like the word field that you use is just whatever you use.
The field of the field of Ishvara, the field of the whole, Jagat, the world.
Yeah. You can't leave it. You can't leave it.
You can't leave it, that's right. You can't leave
There's
it.
no getting out of it.
You've really got to bring it back to Brahman at that point and just see it as the witness. It's just the witness state. That's it.
Yeah. So it's very important. I like that you asked that because you see how even despite explaining it, there's still this sometimes tendency to go, I don't feel so with Ishvara. You see, but we have to simply understand you yourself are another wave, and the wave belongs to whom? The ocean. And the ocean is Ishvara.
So
and the truth of the ocean is water, Satchit. That means not only do you find Ishvara everywhere, but you also simultaneously find consciousness, which is why Ishvara applies to both Satyam and Mithya. That's why we have just Jiva, Jagat, and Ishvara, which is why at the beginning of this course I divided into Ishvara 1 and Ishvara 2, but now we're starting to understand there is actually no difference. Ishvara is both 1 and 2.
I guess that's why Mithya exists, so you can have a relationship with Ishvara.
Thank God it exists.
So having a relationship with Ishvara, I'm just thinking myself as self.
Yeah.
As Mithya.
But does self, is that helpful to think of yourself as self having a relationship with Ishvara, Nitya?
Okay,
which self?
Good, okay. Okay, a wave that is thinking that it's having a relationship with the ocean, is that helping? Because the wave already is only possible because of the ocean.
There's no choice.
Right.
Okay, now at the same time, Lloyd, yes, it is helpful because sometimes when our minds are just used to thinking that Ishvara is a wave, that's fine, we're not going to deny that. It's useful to think that because at least it's going to bring one and clarify this understanding that there is nothing you can do to get out of Ishvara.
It's like trying to have a relationship with your leg. It's just just part of you.
Yeah, like the leg is given to you. You didn't create your leg. The leg was created very intelligently. We don't know how to create a leg. And
I guess I'm thinking of how to encourage thoughts of devotion,
Okay.
like deity,
beautiful.
deities and things like that.
Reverence.
Any suggestions?
I think if we can control your vasanas,
Yeah.
kind of self-discipline, and over time, it's going to take time.
Yes.
It's going to take a long time.
Yes.
For
I like
most
to
of
say
us.
that a long time.
Most of
We
us
should
it's
just
gonna
be
take a long time.
we should be glad that he said a long time, because what else is there to do?
Yeah.
Right. So so
Self-realization is always a tricky thing, and it's just
long time.
meditation. People go for yogis and yogas and all that. It's, they go up to the hills and meditate.
Yeah.
They are different.
Yes.
I can't explain in words, but they have a different perspective.
Yes.
And my take on that would
Yeah.
be, and I keep coming back to this from my point of view anyway, is that relationship you're talking about, I've managed to find through getting a bit more intuition into the chakra system and the kundalinis, and how that energy, just the energy, actually is part of that connection.
Okay. One way that I've done that was through through prayer. Through prayer, that just acknowledging my weakness to Ishvara. I've got nowhere to go. I'm not so smart. I feel lost, and then I just acknowledge that to Ishvara. In other words, it's a very humbling prayer that I am powerless. That's a very nice way to just to say, Ishvara, I need help. Because there's no one else to ask, actually, at the end of the day. Because if you ask other people, they also don't know. They're also going through their own time. So ultimately, we just resort to that one principle, which we cannot see, because it's, we cannot see the cause, but we can see the effects. And you're one of the effects of the body, as a birth of a human being. So one way is just through prayer and, gratitude.
So
That's a nice way.
So prayer,
Thank the world.
I know that, not like that is the Lord's Prayer from Christianity.
It doesn't matter. It's all Ishvara anyway. You see.
Yeah. So
I guess they call it, in the Vedas they would call it mantras in terms of the prayers. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But the mantras have specific attributes
Yeah.
based, and again, I can only come from my background of knowing the chakras, and the way the chakra systems work is that the energy level where the chakras are is your reflection of the human part of the Ishvara, and the way the chakras sit within the body, and has that, we'll come back to Dharma again, and how you then have the divinity aspect of those qualities, the divine aspect of the qualities, where when those qualities are honoured and respected and worshipped, that's where the Dharma is perfect and pure, and that's where the whole being works. It's when you start going against those dharmas or not respecting, and worship is the best way to build that relationship you're talking about.
Altar, private altar meditation, just silencing your mind, having nice pictures of things that represent the Lord. For me, it's my parents. Of course, you heard that before. You can have Krishna, also was one of them.
Well, interesting enough, one of the things that I found, again, back to that Kundalini thing, because the other parallel with the Kundalini is it's the mother aspect of God. The female aspect of God is the Kundalini, the power, the Shakti. The Adi Shakti is the Kundalini. And that's where the something, the creation, the something as opposed to the no thing. And the two, I suppose it's duality when it comes to that.
No, whatever works. Lloyd, I think it's just about finding something that works for you, because it's different for everyone. And I think the danger of answering this is that this works for me, but it doesn't work for someone else.
That's it.
So you just need to look.
It's very personal.
Andre, isn't karma yoga a way of the same thing?
That's it. It's a solution to so many of these questions. Yeah, that means you're always contemplating. You're seeing Lord everywhere. You may not see it at the beginning. I'm not talking about physical seeing, like face of the Lord that planted everywhere. I'm just talking about an understanding. So it starts very slow, right? It's very kind of cumbersome. But you're just seeing, like, wow, I'm turning on the remote control. You inquire, well, this remote comes from the ground, from Mother Earth, and so many millions of years of carbons were formed to be extracted, and where do these carbons come from? 5 elements. And then you start to go, wow, so the 5 elements were put together intelligently. Karma yoga is a good solution.
It seems like rituals or even certain pictures or things can, to me anyway, can seem like it's very separate and somewhere else and only relevant when I'm looking at it or attending to it, aware of it. Whereas karma yoga, if you can make that a practice all the time, it's always there. And then you probably, as you say, it's a process, and you start to see.
And it takes time.
Start to see it everywhere.
So karma yoga is that. It's a good thing you brought up, Adrian, because it's instantaneous. That's the whole point, to see Ishvara everywhere.
Isn't that discrimination as well?
At the same time, it's also discrimination. So not only is it revering the Lord and honoring the Lord for having given you this body, this health, this mind to think, to be interested in moksha, in dharma, but also you're constantly, over time you go, well, I'm just actually praying to myself. I'm actually just, seeing effects of the world. I'm just seeing issue. I'm aware of these effects. So then it creates a subtle discrimination between the awareness and Ishvara.
And I guess that's why duality is important to a point.
Exactly. You see, that's the paradox. It is a non-dual reality, but duality plays such a huge, beautiful role in
otherwise you can't see it.
Causing even Vedanta's duality. Every word here is just what? If I tell you happy, I'm not telling you sad.
But you've got to know about sad.
So how does Vedanta work? It doesn't give you something new. It removes these false notions that Ishvara is not already everywhere, and removes these false notions that moksha is somewhere else, and I am not deserving of it. It just removes these false notions, which is what conditioning has created, and all of these births have caused us a new birth now, and it's never going to end until you recognize everything is me. Which is what we're doing, so it shouldn't even be a surprise anymore. We're really getting into the nitty-gritty of it. Yeah, good questions and very, very important. I like all the comments brought up.
Another comment then is, it's been very difficult to see what I am not, or which is the one big realization. I always thought I was free will. Like I'm deciding to do this now. I thought that was the real me, but seeing that now as just another part of the jiva is very helpful and such a relief.
It all comes down to relief. That's called freedom, man. You're free from the world.
I mean, just all that guilt you felt.
Just
let go.
Very good. That means this is working. There's no better testimonials than that.
But then you realise that your obligation is to live in the moment and act in the moment and have the discrimination.
Thanks, Andre.
Thank you very much.